Hello, my name is Joseph Jensen. I'm an ordained minister of the ULC Church, which is the Universal Life Church. I was ordained by them in June the 9th, 2019. Now, I explained why I became an ordained minister in the last video. But I also said in the last video that I would be talking about Mohammed. Mohammed, I'm going to tell you what God told me. And from there, I research. Every time God tells me something, I go back and start investigating, looking for answers, looking for details. When I can't find any details, I cannot find any answers. That's all right. I'll still make God's claim. I don't have to prove God's right. That's when people listen to this video. That if you can't prove God's right, there's a good reason. There's a good possibility it's not wrong. And until somebody can prove it's wrong, I'll always think it's right. I'd rather believe God than believe anybody else if you give me a better answer. So I'm going to tell you what God told me and what I investigated. We're talking about Muhammad. Muhammad was born in 570 AD. When he was born in 570 AD, he married a woman. He lived a fairly normal life as an Islamic in Mecca, where they worshipped 360 gods, exactly 360 gods. I think I explained that in the last video. The thing about it is that he didn't know any difference. When he married a woman named Khadijah, she was 15 years older than him. I don't know how old Muhammad was when he got married, but she already had a daughter. She was a widow. And Muhammad married her. Then Khadijah and Muhammad had 3 boys and 3 girls. And they grew up under the Islamic 360 gods. Just like normal. No, there's no big difference. Muhammad, exactly when he's 40 years old, in the year 610 AD, he was in a cave. Now, I don't know how often he went to this cave or whatever, but the cave was called Hira, Hira. And in this cave, he met with the angel Gabriel. He was either led there, or he was in the cave and the angel Gabriel popped up. Whatever. I'm only telling you what God told me. And he told Muhammad, and I'm not going to speculate on anything else. I'm going to say that the angel Gabriel said there is not 360 gods. There is but one God. The Arabic word for God is Allah. Allah. He said there is but one Allah. I know what the next thing God tells me, that he went, and it makes common sense. He went back to Mecca and he started shouting it in the streets. Now, his sons would have been about 20 years old. He was 40. He would have got married somewhere around the age 20 to this woman, that was Khadijah. She was 15 years older than him, so if he married her when 20, she would have been 35. Anyway, what I'm trying to say, I don't want to speculate on that, because I'm just saying that what God told me, they had the 3 sons and 3 daughters. In the year 610, he had the vision. He immediately went from the cave to Mecca and he started talking about it, telling people, preaching. That's as far as Muhammad ever got to preach. Okay? You got to understand what I'm saying. He never sang out in mosque. He never talked to them, because the day that he opened his mouth and said there is not but 360 gods, there's only one God, Allah. Islamic soldiers beat him. They beat him down. His sons came to his rescue. They would have been about 20 years old. Close to it or over that. But the Islamic soldiers, whatever, killed their sons. All three sons. And to make their point, they cut their heads off in front of Muhammad. He surely made a point. Muhammad kept his mouth shut. He had to go home to Khadijah and say, crying and say, the sons are lost. No doubt he was cut up, he was beaten, he was hurting and everything else. But he had to go give her the news. Khadijah, after that, she said, why, Muhammad, did you say, do that? You lost my sons. Okay? That was bad enough. But things calmed down, and then Muhammad tried again to preach. There's not 360 gods, there's but one God. One God, Allah. And when he said that, they grabbed the daughter. They raped her in front of him. Held him while they raped his daughter. Then they kidnapped her and married her to an Islamic leader. Guess what those Islamic leaders are called today? Shiites. Now, every time Muhammad tried to open his mouth, he lost another daughter till he lost all three. Now, keep in mind, this was in 610. 9 years. 9 years from the time he started doing this. He lost 3 daughters, 3 sons in 9 years. The people of Mecca saw this. They wanted to believe in Allah, but they didn't want the same thing happening to them. They saw it. They know what to happen. The thing about it was Muhammad at 619 AD, Khadijah died. Brokenhearted, no doubt. Long before Khadijah died, their real daughter, she went back to be in Islam, the Islamic thing, for fear for her father. She couldn't go along with being raped and kidnapped. She just fit in the other way. You know what I'm saying? She wasn't a follower of Muhammad. Muhammad was not a popular man with anybody. People didn't want to be around Muhammad because they could be persecuted as well. So Khadijah's oldest daughter split wherever she went. So it left Khadijah and Muhammad together. Possibly Khadijah never was around Muhammad after she lost her sons. Or after she lost her daughters, for sure, she was separated. But she died, definitely when she died in 619 AD, she died brokenhearted. That's not, you don't have to figure that one out. You could know that's got to be true. Any woman that loses 3 sons and 3 daughters kidnapped over a man that every time he preached, they persecuted somebody. The day, this is very important, this is like in November. I think it was November the 2nd, 619 AD. You're right at 6. Muhammad was 49, but he'll soon be 50. Okay? 2 months later. It's already December. Already November, then you're going to December. It's only 2 months from being 50 years old. But it didn't happen when he's 50. Right then and there, when Khadijah's death, Muhammad went crazy. He started turning over the statues and screaming out, Allah, Allah, there's but one Allah. You killed my wives, you killed my children, there's but one Allah. Everybody, why do you not help me? He started turning over the statues. He started turning over the scrolls. He started taking paper, whatever they had, decorations and everything. He just tore the place up. The Meccans, he urged the Meccans to come on, help me. There's but one Allah. You want to believe them? There's but one. They just killed my 3 sons. They killed my 3 daughters. They took my 3 daughters. They raped them in front of me. You know that. Do you want to follow these people? So those Meccans in Mecca started helping turn over the statues, tearing up the walls, beating up Islamics at times. You know what I'm saying? Whatever they could do, they were furious with Muhammad. They seen enough. And there was a revolution. Keep in mind, it's right there at 620 AD, but it's actually 619 at November, right? The same day that Khadijah died, 2 months before 2020. They had the revolution and they joined in. It turned into kind of a bloody revolution. Because the army was still there. The army pulled out their swords and started killing people. Muhammad, not followers, but Meccans, helped him escape. 157 Meccans helped Muhammad get the heck out of Dodge, to leave for his life. They saved Muhammad. They weren't necessarily followers. Nobody was a follower, but they know they were people that started to believe in Mecca, and they knew that they were either way they're going to die. They were in part of the revolution. So those 157, and that's what I did find out. I found out that same thing in the encyclopedias. That whole story right there, I found that out for to be true. It takes some digging. But the interesting thing is, if you look at the Wikipedia today, you look at anything today, and the first 300 hits are going to tell you nothing about where he went. They're going to say he went to Medina. It stayed from 2022 to Medina. They're going to say 2020 to 2022, rather. He was in Medina. That's a lie. Muhammad could not, in those 157 Meccans that helped him escape, they had posters put out. They take all, everybody was to be taken dead or alive with their heads cut off, right? But Muhammad. They wanted Muhammad to come back and recant. Force him to recant. And go back and say, I just made that up. Right? Just all you want to do is make him recant what he said. But Muhammad and those 157, they couldn't even stay in Saudi Arabia. When they got to Ethiopia, the Ethiopians gave them refuge. Okay, this is very important. Because the Islamics never caught on that where he was for 2 years. They have a clue, because even today they still don't know that he was in Ethiopia, because you know who told me? God. And when the God tells me something, like I said, if I can't prove it wrong, I'm sure I can find out that it's true, because I can go to Ethiopia. But I can't afford to do that right now. So I'll just tell you and it doesn't mean I have to prove God, I'm right or wrong. I'm leaving that to you guys. I'm leaving it up to you. This is God's statement to me. Okay? He went to Ethiopia and was given refuge. It would have still been the year 620 when they claimed he went to Medina. Common sense to say he didn't go to Medina. It's not that far from Mecca. They would have found Muhammad right away. Then it wouldn't take them 10 years to find Muhammad. Okay? They would have found him right away. But they went to Ethiopia, and the Ethiopians gave them refuge. That party of 157 Meccans that helped him escape, and Muhammad stayed there almost 1 year. They were learning about Christianity. How can you learn about Christianity from Ethiopians? Well, let's go back and let's talk about that. The Queen of Sheba was the first daughter of Cush. Cush, after they changed the tongues, first off, Cush's father was Ham, the first king of Babylon. When he was old, I'm talking about real old, he's fixing to die. When he was like 450 years old, he tried to get Cush to take his place on the throne. Cush says, no, I don't want no part of this deal. But Nimrod was old enough. He's a young guy, big, bad hunter, strong as the Dickens. He isn't scared of his dad either. Cush was a black man. And I'll tell you why. He was black. God told me that. But not only that, when the languages changed, Cush went to Ethiopia. One is his first daughter. Her name was Sheba. Well, she was the Queen of Sheba. Okay? He named Sheba, was actually her name, because Cush named it Sheba after her. So you say Queen of Sheba means her name was Sheba too. You know, Sheba married King Solomon. So Cush didn't go along with the Sumerian religion, which is basically what Shem was the high priest of. Anybody that wants to look all that stuff up, they find out that Shem went to a town that started called Ur. That's where Abraham was born. Anybody that was related to Shem, descendant of Shem, they were born in Ur. Abraham was born the 8th son after Shem, born after Shem. The thing about it was Ur, the reason Shem went to Ur was because either the angels of the past or whatever, or it was Shem's idea, was before, they said he lived 100 years before the flood. So he could have been involved with them before the flood. What they call the Horites. And with the Horites were high priests. And they also had a condition even in the days before the flood. These Horites kind of messed up the earth. They were high priests, but they were also, whether they're high priests of the angels or this was Enoch's idea, because he was the first high priest, that they had to keep their bloodlines pure. All the sons could have daughters anytime they wanted, not marry them, just have children by them. That's called a Horite. They just had children. In the old world, as an example, the men and women that weren't high priests took it that they could have any woman anytime and to have children. They were Sumerians. Before the flood, the place was called Sumer. That's where the word Sumerian comes from. Well, after the flood, Shem lived with his father Noah for 39 years. When he left his father after 39 years, there's another story about that, but they left their father. Shem went to Ur because he couldn't mix. He didn't want his bloodline to be intermixed with his brothers, Jared and Ham. He told Ham to go on and become the king. Jared would be the subject. Kind of backwards from what the Bible states about the curse on Canaan, because Ham was supposed to be the servant of Jared. But it didn't work out that way. But Ham was the servant of Shem. Okay? So maybe that does make sense. But that was my own thinking. I shouldn't get into that. I'm going to tell you what God told me. Anyway, anybody would do any research at all would find out Ur is called the cradle of civilization. Why it is the cradle of civilization? Because the Sumerian religion had 360 gods. They knew 12 months in the year. They knew there was 90 days in season. They knew there was 30 days in a month. Heck, they might have known there was 60 seconds in an hour. These people were very, very smart. Their smartness came from Enoch. Enoch wrote about this stuff. Enoch's books that were common read back in medieval times, before they were decanonized, or not even canonized. Back then they didn't canonize, but during Constantinople's time or whatever, they forbid anybody to read the book again. But the book would state they had 360 gods. Every calendar back then, ancient calendar, was 360 days based on the 360 gods. Okay, when this 360 is a very important, what do you call it? Because that's what determined how many gods they had. That's what determined when they built the Kaaba in Mecca. Most everybody, you can look it up. There's a temple in Mecca, the cubicle temple in Mecca. Up until 1960, there's many temples were built. But the one in 1960 that I had a picture of it on an old computer of the old Mecca, before they ground off the picture, the carvings of the gods on the top border of the Kaaba on every side. There was 90, 90, 90, 90. 90 days is one season. 90 days on the other is 9 seasons. It is another season. On all four sides, exactly 90. 90, 90, 90. 90, 90, and 90 completes a circle. 90, 90, and 90 completes a square. 90 degrees, 90 degrees, 90 degrees completes a rectangle. It's a number, an Arabic number, that came from the Sumerian religion all the way back to Enoch. Enoch was the son of Cain. Cain was a black man. Why was he black? Because when he killed Abel, God gave him his punishment. He gave him this punishment and told him that he was going to go out in the wilderness and till the ground, and it would bear nothing but thistles and thorns. And wherever he should go, he would have to be cursed. He would curse the ground and curse him. Well, Cain begged God. He says, please, I can't bear that punishment, lest everybody comes to kill me later on. To seek vengeance. God marked his skin black to protect him. And he said a warning to everybody. Do not touch Cain or help Cain. It's forbidden. It wasn't a curse, it was a blessing. Otherwise, Cain would have surely been dead. He also gave Cain features to bear his punishment. Now, if you happen to look at an Aborigine or something, you would surely see they're the ones I think of when I think of Cain. Why? Because their face features are actually cute. But look what the Aborigines do. They have to dig for their water. They find water in roots. They live in thistles and thorns. They have to dig for lizards to eat. They can't survive. I mean, the only way that the Aborigines have survived is because Cain was a survivor. There's 1.2 black people in this world. Probably more than that. But this is what I'm saying. Was that was Cain cursed or was he blessed? He's blessed. Believe me, the black people weren't stupid. To tell you how smart these black people were, starting with Cush. After the languages changed. Yes, he was there in Babylon during the Tower of Babel. When the languages changed, Cush immediately went to Ethiopia. Go figure. He was really black. Okay? He went to Ethiopia. He was a fair and honest man. His daughter was a righteous woman. Solomon found her to be the favorite wife, his favorite wife. And Solomon wrote that stuff. Okay? Now, when they got there, let me get back on track. I'm trying to think. It was again like 622 or 621 because she married Solomon, Queen of Sheba, she was a Jew. There's a king called Nebuchadnezzar later on. We're talking about way after the Tower of Babel, but we're talking about still King Nebuchadnezzar succeeded the kings in that palace. He conquered Jerusalem, and he went to Solomon's temple. And there was nothing in Solomon's temple, but they burned it to the ground. Where's the stuff at? The stuff is in Ethiopia. In fact, the guy, not Bill Gates, but you know this guy Gates that's on TV, on Expedition X and things. He got to go meet with the Holy of Holies, Josh Gates. He had an interview. It was on one of his programs. He had a short interview with the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies actually come out of the thing, and they said, Bill Gates said, "Is the Ark of the Covenant actually in there?" And he said, "Yes." Can I go in and see it? No. For obvious reasons. Anybody that goes in there besides the Holy of Holies was instant death. Now, whether that's death by God or by the Ethiopians, it's sure death. Okay? But the point of the matter is, it's all there. And they'll claim it. They'll tell you it's there. Now, in 621, when they give Mohammed refuge, well, first off, after Solomon, I mean, there was more to the Ethiopians than just Cush. They had the knowledge of the Sumerians too. They knew the stars. In a place called Ur, they call it the cradle of civilization, was the first written language. Not hieroglyphics, not pictures, but the first alphabet. For the first, civilized world. They had communication. They had a lot of knowledge. They knew the stars. They named the stars. They named the clusters. They were smart people. Okay? So Cush and them was raised knowing a lot of stuff too. But when he met Sheba and they became Jews, they still had that same knowledge. And they followed the stars. They were the three wise men. Yeah, three black men. They went and found Jesus in the manger. And they followed Jesus from the manger to the cross. They know more about Jesus than the Bible would ever write down because they knew him from birth. They knew the stories of Jesus all the way to the cross. They had to be there before the apostles. I don't know exactly what they know. I don't even know what they know. I would say exactly. I don't know anything they know. This is what God told me. That they were the first Christians. They were there every time he spoke. They were there when he grew up. There was one guy in the Bible that they found out. Well, they found this out when they found those things in the cliffs, the Dead Sea Scrolls. One problem with the Dead Sea Scrolls, a lot of it was about Christianity. And another part was written by Thomas in Christianity. But one reason why Thomas wrote so much about Jesus Christ not being anything really but his friend, because they grew up together. Thomas wrote that in things, Dead Sea Scrolls. He wrote a lot of, it seemed like negative stuff, but it wasn't really negative stuff, but he couldn't figure that Jesus Christ was anything more than a friend, because they raised together. So the doubting Thomas of the Bible. Getting back to Mohammed and his 157 followers. They stayed in Ethiopia. Not right away, but God's telling me it wasn't a year, but it was close to a year. When they were told by Jesus' words that a man should only have but one wife, and that one wife was to become like one flesh. No, man, they couldn't put up with that, because they left their families with more wives. They were looking forward to having many more wives, and that in their religion, they didn't really have to have wives. They could have any woman. The Ethiopians, they were Jews and they were Christians. So they said, no, you don't teach our people this stuff that you're talking about. A man only has to have one wife. I told Mohammed, they got to go. They're trying to influence our people. We know who we follow. We follow God. And we follow Jesus Christ. But we can't. But there's not going to be this thing about having more than one wife. Well, the Ethiopians told 157 they had to get out, but they told Muhammad he could stay. He could stay another year. I mean, they didn't even say another word. He said he could stay because you've only ever had one wife. And you didn't ever speak against or for us about what they believed in. Therefore, you could stay. But they got to go. Now keep in mind, we're talking about, that's from 620 AD to 621 AD. Okay? Now the Arabs already wrote down that he left. Well, after the revolution, he went to Medina in 620. They didn't know where he's at. They just said he went to Medina in 620. His followers left. When his followers left, Muhammad stayed another year. Then a few soldiers, Arabic soldiers, they found one of the followers that helped Muhammad. They cut his head off right away. Before they cut the head off, they found out where he was at. And they went to Ethiopia. They went there with maybe a dozen soldiers, maybe 2 dozen. I don't know. I just speculate. I shouldn't speculate on this because I don't know how many they went with, but it was more than one. Okay? Let's just say that. And when they got there, God showed me and told me this. They threw the head down of the dude that they cut the head off. And they told him, he told us Muhammad was here. Turn him over to us. Well, the Ethiopians aren't intimidated at all by anybody. So they said, you better we don't know any Muhammad. We don't know anything about these people you're talking about. You better ask him again. Of course, the guy's head's right there. It's not there. And they said, no, he told us there. They said, well, how do you know? How do you know he wasn't trying to send you on the wrong way? On a false, giving you false information to send you, and they said they didn't have a point, so they had to leave. But they left with a warning. They said, if we ever find another follower, we won't cut off his head and we'll come back with the army. Well, Muhammad was in the bushes probably, but he heard that. He knows the discussion. And he told back to the Ethiopians, no more people are going to die on my account. I got to go. He already wanted to go because he figures he's no better than anybody else. He should be the one that's dead. So the Ethiopians gave him a horse, gave him provisions, as much provisions as he can carry, and he left. The leader of the Ethiopians sent in 2 people to follow Muhammad from a distance. Those people weren't necessarily black because they had to fit in. Not everybody in Ethiopia was black. In fact, Cush wasn't pure black. He's from mix. Just the thing about it is, when you've got a mix, a person one could be black and another one could be lighter. That's the case it was with Canaan. When they say the black churches want to say there was a curse on Canaan and Canaan was the first black, they're wrong. God told me that too. The word Canaan itself doesn't mean light skin, but it's a lighter skin. Okay? That's what God told me. I can't prove that wrong because that's what God told me. But he had a lighter skin. And it was the curse on Canaan. These people think that he was the first black man. The first black man was Cain. God told me that. And it wasn't a curse. Otherwise, you wouldn't have 1.2 billion black people in this world. And like I said, a whole lot more, probably. Okay? And they weren't stupid people. Cush was a very smart person. Trustworthy. Cush stayed in Ethiopia. After the change of languages, Ham was in Egypt. Ham died when he got to Egypt. He died at 500 years old. The people that spoke Egyptian That's how I know Ham was there. Hagar was given to Shem. She was Egyptian. They spoke Egyptian. That's one language. Shem spoke Hebrew. That's another language. You didn't have two languages back then. You didn't have one country and one language. You had one before the Tower of Babel. There was one language. That was the same language of Adam and Eve. You know who wasn't there? Noah wasn't there. He knows nothing about where his sons went. He knew nothing about the Tower of Babel. He knew nothing about it. He didn't follow him. And Noah had more than one wife. And he had more children. In fact, he had a whole race of children. They're named Iraqis. They were in Iraq. There was no Turkey then. Yeah, sure, they landed on the top of Mount Iraq, but it wasn't. They didn't have a language and they didn't have a country then. They just landed in the mountains. It was when they started splitting up after the languages and started going to their own places that the countries developed. Now, Noah couldn't follow his family after he had Ishmael with the Hagar. He would have been about 70 years old, exactly 70, pretty much 70 years old, according to the Torah, when they split apart. Because when he went to, he couldn't follow Shem because he had breached the bloodlines when he had Ishmael. He had contaminated the bloodline and they would not let him go with them. So Abraham went to Haran, Turkey. Now remember, he's in Ur, right? He's born in Ur, everybody's born in Ur. But he went there, and this Haran, Turkey, its name actually was Urfa. They claim today that was the birthplace of Abraham. Give me a break. Abraham was 50 years old, or 70 years old, when he got to Urfa. And God told Abraham, hey, no, don't you stop here. You go on back to Canaan. You go to Canaan with Shem. Well, Canaan is Israel, but it also stretches all the way to the borders of Egypt on the Jordan River. Guess what? That's exactly where they went. He didn't want to get anywhere close to Shem. He was an outcast. He's exiled from being around Shem. So he went the opposite way. How do I know he's unclean? Because God told me so. It makes sense too. Because Hagar was banished by Abraham after 14 years, and they got to Canaan. They spent 14 years. Somewhere between there, about 12 years old, 12 years later, Sarah had a child. And Sarah was Abraham's sister because she was a Horite. That's why she couldn't have children. That's why she told him to sleep with Hagar. So when they like I said, when God told them not to stay in Turkey, to go back to Canaan. But they didn't go to Israel. They went to Canaan on the Jordan River. I said, why did I know that? Because when Hagar was banished by Abraham, she was crying at the Jordan River. It was the angel that actually helped her across the river into Egypt. Makes sense, doesn't it? Before then, it was just a language. There was no country. But the angel helped her across the Jordan River into Egypt. And she was in Egypt. That's why you know Ham was there. Because she was Egyptian. Ham spoke Egyptian. Now getting back to Cush. Egypt, because after Ham died, Cush went to spent a couple years in Ethiopia it wasn't very long. I think it was maybe 10 years later. He saw that the pharaohs were actually being voted in. They got outside their family. They're picking and choosing who they wanted to be pharaohs. And Egypt was kind of messed up. It was going on like a democratic kind of thing. They're going to vote in who they wanted to be leaders. Well, Cush said, no, we're not losing it, my family. That was my father's place. So Cush went to Ethiopia and conquered it before it really got started. He reigned almost 1,000 years, I think it is what I read. Now, it was a long time that the black people reigned over Egypt. During that time, and I just recently saw what do you call it? A documentary about the first pharaohs. I think it starts with an N. I think it ends in J-U. It's like Nuju or something like that. Where the first pyramids were. There's a bunch of them. And they predate the pyramids, any of the pyramids in Egypt. There are a bunch of them, like I said. They were Cush's family. They weren't as nice as pyramids, but they were still pyramids. And there was a bunch of them, like I said, they were mounds, but they weren't as tall and they weren't as nice. But there was still a whole bunch of them. I'm thinking it was Cush reigned for 1,000 years in Egypt. That's how come I know he's a real trustworthy man, because he went back and reclaimed his father's country. All the brothers, they couldn't talk to each other, so they all split their own ways. Jared, they were the builders of the Tower of Babel, because if Ham was the king and Shem was the high priest, as overseers, telling them to build the Tower of Babel and making sure it gets done as overseers, like Abraham was supposed to take the place of his thing, but he refused to. Okay, but the point of the matter is that they were all, I'm losing my train of thought, but everybody there, the Ethiopians know more about, they were the three wise men that followed Jesus from the manger to the cross. They taught Mohammed Christianity. Now, like I said, Mohammed, when he left, getting back to Muhammad, when Muhammad left there and they followed him, he went to Medina. Sure he did. But he stayed in the house. He stayed in the house so long, didn't come out for nobody, that the Ethiopians, the people, the spies, or whatever you want to call them, they got worried. They knew he couldn't have no more food. He couldn't have no more provisions, water, or anything. He never went outside, so they went checking on him. They found him inside his house, laying in his own feces, I guess. He wasn't gone outside. He was ill. He was sick. He'd been like Howard Hughes. You know what I'm saying? Except for he wouldn't have been rich. He was starving and he passed out. Ethiopians had to feed him and stay there long enough to get back his health before they left him again. Muhammad wouldn't have anybody stay there, and he couldn't preach. 8 years he stayed in Medina, hidden. He didn't build a mosque. He didn't preach. He didn't go outside. Ethiopians can testify to that. They got the papers with the Ark of the Covenant, no doubt. Anything Muhammad said, anything Muhammad did, any writings he had, believe me, the Ethiopians would have it along with the Ark of the Covenant. Probably there with the Holy Holies. Okay? And they'll tell you that when they gave him refuge And they tell him what happened. You know what the Ethiopians know? The story I just told you is what the Ethiopians know. That they killed his 3 sons. They kidnapped his 3 daughters. That's how God told me. You want to know? The world wants to know? Go ask the Ethiopians. They have the papers. They got every written word of Muhammad. They got the whole story written down. Islam had never figured it out. To this day, you can look up there and they think he went straight to Medina after 620, after he rebelled. It was actually 619. 2 months later, he just turned 620. But he rebelled, when he rebelled the same day that she died. He was out of there that same day. And when he was out of there, he didn't go to Medina. He had to get out of Saudi Arabia altogether. And he found the refuge in Ethiopia. So when he went back to Medina, after 2 years, he didn't come outside. He didn't preach. He didn't want another person to die for his sake. Nobody else was going to lose his head while he's there. 8 years later, they found him. They found Muhammad. They said, this guy's been living in his house for 8 years. He never comes out. And we think he might be Muhammad. That's all they had to say to him. The Meccans, they are already turned Meccans. I mean, there was 10,000 soldiers in Mecca. They had control of everybody's mouth. I mean, nobody could say Allah. Everybody that was already beheaded during the revolution, down to the sympathizers. There was no more sympathizers. Nobody else saying Allah. They wouldn't say Allah. They stayed that way. But when they got the word that they think Muhammad's in Medina, 10,000 soldiers. Now catch this. You understand the word 10,000. One of the Qurans, not the first Quran, but the last Quran in Medina, will say Muhammad was a great warrior. And he got 10,000 soldiers march on Mecca. Now listen to what I'm going to tell you. 10,000 soldiers left Mecca. Islamic soldiers went to Medina, brother, to get Muhammad. They needed Muhammad to recant and say, hey, I just made this stuff up. I was just playing a joke. You know what I'm saying? To go back to the 360 gods. In fact, they were trying to get him to write the Quran. They already had plotted everything out. Because Muhammad, they knew the people behind their backs were always talking about Muhammad. They lost their popularity. But when those 10,000 soldiers left Mecca, guess what they did? Wrong. 10,000, there wasn't many more soldiers left in Mecca. Almost every soldier there was left to go to get Muhammad. So the 36,000 Meccans took whatever soldiers there was. The minute they were out of sight, they took them over. And they cut off the heads of Islams. And they said also, this was, it was probably a week later that they were thinking about it, and then they did it. They said, they started calling out Allah. Well, the Islamic leader inside the Kaaba, he said he had told, first off, I'm going to tell you the story, but I'm going to go back on this. That is the same day when people started using the word Allah. whenever they decided to go up against an empty Mecca of Islamic soldiers, they were able to say, okay, no more. We're not Islamists. We are Muslims. Come on, people. Understand what I'm saying? They said, there's but one Allah. And one Allah, we do not call ourselves a Muslim. If you call yourself a Muslim, we'll kill you. We are Muslims. The Meccans, that day, when they took over the army, they would not be called Islams again. They said, you can call us Muslims. That's the difference right there. The world needs to know it and hear it. Now, what happened to the 10,000 that went after Medina, after Muhammad? Well, they got there, they found Muhammad. They took him out of his house. And a general took 1,000 soldiers back to Mecca to recant. He didn't know what would happen in Mecca. He didn't have any idea that the Meccan was now praying to Allah. And they were not calling themselves Islamists. But he had an inclination. The general knew something told him there was something wrong before he reached the walls of Mecca. So he got off his horse and took his cloak off and put it over the shoulders of Muhammad. And while he said putting the cloak around Muhammad, he released the binds where he's tied to the horse. The army couldn't see it. Then he took Muhammad's horse and he put Muhammad on his horse in front of him, going into the city, like a parading him in. He was doing this to cover, CYA, cover his own butt. So what did they say? He knew if it would go sour by parading him in, he could just say, "Hey, I brought you back Muhammad, your prophet." But he didn't have to say that, because before he got to the gates with that, parading him up there with his army, guess what the Meccans did? Praise be to God, praise be to Allah, it's Muhammad. They all started screaming it. Praise be to Allah, it's Muhammad. 36,000. They said, praise be to Allah, it's Muhammad. They opened the doors. As soon as they opened the doors, everything was fine. The soldiers were coming in because they're being paraded in there, until Muhammad got excited, jumped down off his horse and started shaking people's hands and hugging people. And then the soldiers realized it was a trap. The general was one of them. At least that's what it looked like to them. So they went to drawing their swords. They didn't even get the swords out the sheath before they were pulled off their horses. The Meccans took their swords away and cut off their heads. They cut off their heads. 36,000 Meccans against 1,000. Now the 9,000 that were still in Medina, what did they do? They didn't need hard to get out of sight before they committed genocide on a town of 500 people of Medina. Every woman, every child, every man, every son, everybody. Heck, if there was a jackrabbit back then, they probably killed it too. They cleared house. They cleaned it. Then after they done that, they cleaned the bodies. They buried the bodies. And they started building a mosque. They start building the city around. Those 9,000 soldiers had to build their own houses. They went to work and made it, turned it into a town of 500 into a town of 9,000. Built a big mosque. They went about their ways just like they were in Mecca. Praying out from the mosque, way up high in the mosque, praying out their beliefs, right, as normal, worshiping 360 gods, thinking that as soon as Muhammad got there, they could just say, anybody coming to Medina say, yeah, Muhammad left here with the army of 10,000 to return to Mecca, right? And we're 9,000 here, but we're going to grow, right? And we follow Muhammad now. They would pose that lie to make them look like they follow Muhammad. Afterwards, after all the things come true. I mean, this was way later. Okay, I just jumped way too fast. The thing about it was the Medina people didn't know what was going on in Mecca. So just forget about what I just said because it was wrong. When they left, they finally went back to check on the general. 2 months, 3 months later, 4 months later, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, whatever, of that army, of the 9,000, went back to Mecca. And when they got there, guess what? They were outnumbered. The same thing happened to them. This time, the Meccans let them know that they're outnumbered. They put up a white flag. The leaders put up a white flag and said, let us talk to him, Muhammad. And they found that out. They found it out. There's no way to get to him, so they had to turn back around. They put up a white flag to try to meet with Muhammad, to meet with the Muslim leader, the switch code. The guy, when they took over Mecca, was an Islamic leader in the Kaaba. But the moment that Muhammad, the Meccans took over that city, he was a turncoat. You know what I'm saying? So all of a sudden he automatically just became a Muslim, or claimed that. They went back. They had to make a plan. I think God's telling me they were able to go into Mecca under a white flag and go into the Kaaba to talk to the general. And he found out the deal from the Islamic leader. And he said, from the day that the Meccans, we left Mecca, they took us and killed everybody. And the same thing will happen to us, to you. They don't want them to call themselves Islamic. They do not follow us anymore. They call themselves Muslims. Islam says, but he says, Muhammad is agreed to write the papers to explain about Allah. That's what the Muslim leader asked Muhammad when he got there. He says, you can't blame us for not all because we don't understand Allah. You got to explain it to us. Can't you write it down? Well, he put Muhammad in a room before they came, and Muhammad started writing. But you know what Muhammad was writing? About Christianity, what he had learned from the Ethiopians. He learned about Jesus Christ. He learned about Moses. He learned about Adam and Eve. He learned about the Old Testament. He learned all the stuff from the Ethiopians and the stories of Christianity. and the stories of the Jews. Some of the stories of the Jews. And what I'm saying is that's how they ended up in the first Quran. In fact, today, even today, the people accept Jesus Christ as the greatest of all prophets. But because of the instruction given by the angel Gabriel that said, there is but one Allah, there can't be two. It was Constantine, that first claimed about the Blessed Trinity, that said that Jesus was God on earth. That really threw not just the Muslim religion off, it threw every religion off. You know why? Because they have said in the Ten Commandments, thou shalt have no other gods before me. And that's what the problem is claiming Jesus, Christians claiming Jesus is God. They'll claim he's a prophet because they say he was a great prophet. They recognize him on Christmas, his birthday. It's not the same day we have. It's probably the more closer to. I think Christmas actually was sometime in March or April. That's where it was, but it was switched by Constantine. Constantine decided to make the most celebrated day of all. If you go back and you look and you see what Christmas is, the 25th of December, you're going to find out it's a pagan holiday for the Romans, for the Persians, for the, just over and over, all these other religions. It's a pagan holiday for all religions. They all claim the 25th. It was the most pagan holiday there was. And yet they made Christmas on that day, along with all the other religions. Look up, there's, even on YouTube where I'm talking about it now, there's people that will explain that. Christmas is a pagan holiday. So is Easter. So is Sunday. It was the day people worshiped the sun god. Monday, the day people worshiped the moon. Constantine added 5 more by the Roman gods. Venus, Jupiter, Mars, Mercury, Saturn. Added those days. 65. But 65 doesn't work with the old calendars. Not 365 days a year. Why doesn't? Because there's nothing special about 365. But when you take the word, the 360, and break it down like Enoch had, how come there's 12 months in a year and then this happens to be 12 Arabic tribes? It couldn't be 11 Arabic tribes. It couldn't be 13. It had to be 12. These are magical numbers. Arabic numbers. Now, people didn't know where. No one today knows that Mohammed went to Ethiopia at all. They think he went straight to Medina and built a mosque, and he was a preacher. When they paraded Muhammad back to Mecca, the people in Medina had to write the Quran, and they wrote about him having an army of 10,000 and marched on Mecca. It was the opposite. The army of Mecca marched on Muhammad, and they returned with 1,000. Now, what did they do after they learned that Mecca had taken the general and put Muhammad in there? Well, they didn't. They knew by the statement that the old Islamic leader, had told him that Muhammad's going to write the papers so that we might know all about Allah. But what Muhammad was actually doing was writing about Jesus Christ and the stories of the Christians, about Moses, about all the stories. Could be the story of anything. It could have been David and Goliath. Anything. They learned this stuff, but what they learned was written in the first. They didn't write about David and Goliath, but they certainly wrote about Moses, and they wrote about Daniel, and they made these people, along with certain people in there in that Qurans. How'd they get in there? How'd they even know about them? They certainly didn't learn it from anybody. If the Muslims don't had to ask and go back to the first Quran and look at all the Christian information that was in the first Quran about Christianity, and that Jesus was widely accepted by the Muslims until the time of Constantine declared that Jesus was God. I've got a problem with that myself. I'm a Christian. I'm not only a Christian, I'm a Pentecostal. Why Pentecostal? When I received the gifts of the Holy Spirit, I pray in tongues. But that doesn't mean my ministry is about that. My ministry is about God. I can't bring Jesus Christ into this picture and talk about Jesus Christ. My ministry is about God. Even Jesus Christ himself said, it's not about me, it's about the Father. Come on. You can't put God above, there shall be no other gods before me, is what God said in the Ten Commandments. The thing about it is what I'm telling you now is what God told me. And get the date straight, because this is the second time I've had to make the state, but I made so many mistakes, and now I don't have any problem telling you the right dates. This is 2022. 622. He left Ethiopia and he went to Medina. In 630 is when they found him in Medina, and they marched him back to Mecca. 2 years later. Okay, this is what God told me, a story, and I wrote it in my book. The Islamists couldn't do anything. They couldn't go back to Mecca. They had to stay in Medina, and they still tried to perpetrate this fraud somehow. So the ones in Medina, on their way back, going back to Medina, after they put up a white flag and learned out about what's going on, they found a house, a rich man's house. It was a Jewish man and his wife. They said, we need you to do something for us. Like they had a choice, They could have said, we need you to go into Mecca, because they have nothing against Jews, and befriend Muhammad. Befriend Muhammad and become his friend and get those papers, his writings. They found out putting their writings in their own Quran. And that's what they told this Jewish couple, please. Then they said, when you get those writings get him here in your house. I want to befriend him and tell him to bring the writings to your house that you want to look at them. Then they give him a vial of poison. Okay, you understand this? You can even find this on the internet if you look hard enough. I took a vial of poison and gave it to him and said, give this to, when Muhammad gets here, give him this in his drink. And when he's dead, bring us the papers and we'll give you a great reward. Bring it back to Mecca. You can do what you want with Muhammad, bury him or whatever. But do not just bring us the papers of Muhammad. Now, you want to read something, read the Quran and find out what they say. In the year 632 AD in the Quran, it says, Muhammad took it suddenly ill in the year 632 AD. And he died, and he's buried in Medina. Okay? We had to bury him. Actually, they didn't say he was buried in Medina. They said they had to bury him. Right? They didn't say where, but they said he died. Now, by their words, he died like June the 9th, 632 AD. 2 years later. Muhammad not only didn't write the Quran, he didn't have any time to write the Quran. Furthermore, the thing about Sharia law, the Quran that's out today writes about Sharia law before they write about anything else. There, you can't find anything about Jesus Christ in there either. The one that's in Medina. But remember, the first Quran they wrote that they had, one written in Medina, says Muhammad was a soldier and he went back to Mecca. How can they do that? They can't write about something that, if he got back to Mecca, and Mecca's no better, he can never take it back. So what they did, they left, some scribes there to write the Quran while they went out recruiting. They had to recruit. And they were recruited for, I don't know how long they recruited, but the story God told me, they went to people's houses. They killed the children. Then they raped the daughters and the wives in front of the husbands and the sons, brothers, whatever. All the men in the house had to stand there and watch while their brothers, sisters, mothers, daughters were all being raped. Not by one, by groups. And they said, okay, if you don't want this to happen every day, you're going to join our army. That's how they recruited. If they come to the United States today, they can defeat us. Why? Because they can go into one single household and they can do the same thing and we don't know about it for months. They could do that to every household. That's how they fight. That kind of warfare, you can't fight against it. So it's like when you get cockroaches in your house. You wonder how they got in there, starting that with. Who brought them in? But then when they're in there, you can't get rid of them. It's hard. And you don't know they're there. They come out from the woodwork. Well, that's how the Islamists fight. They fight so damn dirty. And that's what they did. They tried to recruit. They might have recruited 2,000-3,000 people that way. It wasn't enough. They didn't have enough people to take on Medina. They had to have at least 20,000, 25,000, somewhere close to 36,000 people they had to get rid of. They had the only way that they could actually do this thing was to commit genocide in Mecca to pull this off, like they had done in Medina, which they're not above that. They would have to pull off complete genocide, and they need an army to do it. So in 635 AD, they decided to take Iraq. Holy cow, did they bite off more than they could chew. Iraq's been attacked by two Persian kings at different times, two Turkish kings at two different times, Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, and the Muslims. Nobody's ever defeated them. They claim they defeated them, but you know what? God give the Iraqis, which are Noah's children, they said, you know what's below your feet. You know what we're hiding. They're hiding all the papers that were on the ark. They're hiding any information Methuselah told them to carry with them on the ark. Artifacts, letters, scrolls, information, records of all the children, parents, everything like that. Everything. And they all spoke the language from Adam and Eve. But they said, don't live. When these people come and they conquer you, you fall in line to them. Learn their language. Do not just uncover our language or anything we own to them, lest they plunder us and kill us. That was their defense. Alexander the Great looked for the stuff. Genghis Khan looked for the stuff. They knew it was there. They knew, just like I got, what God told me. They knew it was there, but nobody could get it. Furthermore, when when the Islamic people went into Iraq at 635 AD, they went in there swinging swords, cutting off heads. You know, it went in there wide open. Guess what they found? A few people in the streets. The rest were inside. They ran inside. They hid. Iraqis have been through this a long time, many times before, so they just got themselves off the streets, indoors. They had their hiding places. I mean, they could barge in a couple of houses and they never find nothing, because people they knew how to hide. But one thing the Iraqis knew how to do is this. It wasn't the Islamists that learned how to cut off heads. Every time the Islamists cut off heads, they scream, shout, hey, 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 yeah, and they cut somebody's head off. Not the Iraqis. They wait till everybody goes to sleep. You ever heard the saying, I hope you wake up with your head on straight? Yeah, it started way back then. Islamists got one problem. They can't keep their mouths shut. Iraqis, they don't holler, they don't scream. Yeah, but you don't wake up with your head on. As far as Iraq goes, Saddam Hussein. Everybody in Iraq, under God's instructions, was to fall in line where they didn't bring anything on to the Iraqis. So they prayed 5 times a day. They faced Mecca. They did everything that they're supposed to do. They looked like they were Muslims, or not Muslims, but Islamists. But in actuality, they were all Muslims. They weren't even Muslims. They have their own religion. They had no religion. But when somebody's praying, do you know who they're praying to or what they're doing in their own mind, in their own heart? No, they don't have any idea. God knows, and they know God's listening. So they fall in line. But they don't let it be known. They don't holler, scream, or anything else. They just go on with life without bringing any attention on themselves. Because what they have underneath their feet is too important. Now, how do I know this? I can tell you, I was in Iraq for 2 years. When I first got to Iraq, I was in a place called Tikrit. It was right on the Tigris River. The town was 15 miles inland. Not inland, to the east. going towards Iran. Then you have like a 15-mile like border, like a demilitarized zone, like in Korea. So you got our base. 15 miles from there is Al Qut. Then 15 miles from there is Iran. There's 30 miles between the base and there. Sitting right between us was Al Qut. Now the war started pretty heavy by the time I got there. It was going on really heavy because the Iranians got into this mess too, besides the Americans. There was a big thing about the Americans were in there, Somalia was helping us, El Salvador was helping us, the Georgians, so Russians, the ex-Russian countries, Georgia, all these people were there helping us. But when they started, when the Iranians come in there trying to take Al Qut, trying to stir up trouble, they brought in some screaming Islamists, Shiites. Remember the ones I told you about that were in Iran? The ones that claimed to be the bloodline of Mohammed? By what, rape and murder? Or kidnapping? They didn't murder him. They had babies by him. But that's what Shiites did. And they were in, well, they came into Al Qut when I was there. And the fighting really started. Every night you get in town, you can see the flashes of mortars going off, all this stuff going on, right? Well, the Iraqis couldn't come to work. They there's a bridge on the Tigris River. They normally start coming in anytime from 5 o'clock in the morning they cross the bridge. You can't see the water because the reeds along the riverbanks grow 30, 40, 50, even up to 70 feet tall, some of them. You know what I'm saying? It's fertile ground. You go to Iraq, it's not sand. It's like tobacco snuff. It's like it's a powder puff consistency, baby powder consistency that's tan color. If you spit on it, it's fertile. That's why those reeds will grow. You give it any water at all. But if you sneeze, you don't got to sneeze in your armpit. You got to put a rag over your face because you'll start a dust storm. It's like sneezing into a powder puff, but bigger. You know, it's going to get all over your face, all over your body, all over your clothes. And next thing you know, it's a cartoon because it'll be like Tasmanian devil went through there. And that's what goes on there. That's why those people had to wear face coverings and everything. That was not the only reason they wore face coverings. In the Muslim religion, remember I'm saying not in this Islamic religion that took Iraq, was Islamic. Islamics believe in taking any woman at any time. They don't even have to be wives. Just take them. Have children by them. The same thing happened in Kosovo at one time. You know, England did it too. Watch The Patriot, where they breed it out of them. That was their job. Yeah, this world's been really screwed up for a long time. But you know, they that's the way that they get their people. By rape. By taking anybody. So the women had to dress. They dressed head to toe in garments. According to Sharia law, was written like 12 years, 15 years after all this stuff happened in Iraq and stuff. We're talking about 700 and something. Close to, not even after Muhammad died in 632, and it wasn't until 700s that Sharia law was come. And when Sharia law come, it told people that if a man raped a woman, It was if he claimed that she even looked at him, had everything covered, but even looked at him, she was guilty of the rape. She asked for this. He urged them on. So they wear this clothing everywhere on them because they urged them on. And she's not guilty of rape. She's the one guilty of rape. They're not guilty of nothing. That's Sharia law. They're animals. They're animals. As simple as that. Like I said, I was in Iraq. Saddam Hussein told his own people, and people write about him being so bad because he told them to keep your heads down. Don't look up. And walk slowly and normally, right? Muslims are different. They always popping their heads up. They pop their heads up. They look around, see who's talking. They scream when they get caught. Saddam says, those are the ones that I take and kill them. Put them in jails. Yeah, he killed them all. He kills everybody that stands up. He can torture them. Because he knows they're going to torture his people. That's what they do. Torture for torture. We would understand if they come to us country and do the same thing they did to him. They have to torture those people to find out who they are, who's who. It's Saddam Hussein rebuilt the King Nebuchadnezzar's palace right next, side by side, adjacent to the old rooms, which nobody you can destroy. Not Alexander the Great, not those four kings, not Genghis Khan. Nobody ever touched anything in Iraq. They know what the deal was. Like I said, you don't want to wake up with your head on straight. I guarantee you, Iraqis knew how to take it off, and they wouldn't make a sound about it. And so they were, and they knew that the people had a way to communicate. And they also knew they had places to hide. When anybody discovered that, they can come out like anthills. Like you just slipped on a red anthill. It's like you don't want to mess with these people. They know everything about thing, and they got God behind them. They're Noah's children. They speak the language of Adam and Eve. They got the books and scrolls that were on the ark. They're the only ones who could read them. If it was given to anybody else, we wouldn't be able to read them anyway. Not even anybody in this family. That's Shem, Ham, Japheth. Their languages were changed. They couldn't even talk to each other no more. You know what I'm saying? Abraham, he spoke Hebrew. Hagar spoke Egyptian. Ham spoke Egyptian because he gave Hagar to Abraham's wife. That's how we know. Now, when I got the first time I put this out, I put out mistakes in time. And I got a thumbs down. I would love to talk to the person that put a thumbs down on this. Because that's got to be an ignorant person. You know why? That's somebody that they don't want to hear the truth. They want to know the truth. They don't want to consider the truth. You put a thumbs down on this because you don't want to know anything but what you think you know. But you know what? I've already said what I had to say. I done my job for God. After that, he takes over. He's inside your head. He's inside you. In fact, that's where he abides. He abides in every one of us. That's what I'm trying to tell everybody here. When we die, we're going to go live in our children's DNA, and we live on forever. In DNA. So what is DNA? DNA is heaven. God lives in the DNA, but he's not a gene like this doctor that I have. I made a video yesterday. I was talking about Dr. Eugene Hammer. He's born in 1939, and he died in 2019. Just died a couple years ago. For the last 50 years, he's been trying to prove God lived in everybody's DNA. He was right, but he couldn't prove it because he's looking for God as a gene. God's not the gene. God's the journey. Like everything's got music. When you write music, you put it on lines and you put it on a scale that looks like that, you know? He's in the path. God is the path. That's how he's connected to everybody. Connects to everybody and everything in this world. Plants, animals, deer, insects. Anything that's living has a DNA. And their genes are on this journey with God. Inside God. When we die, we go in heaven. That's that journey. That's that path. That's where God is. That's not lying. Our genes are in there. It'll tell you. Our ancestors, they talk to us all the time. They can hear everything we hear, see everything we see. They know everything about us. God says, I know every hair on your head. Of course he does. He watches being created by our parents in secret. That's what David said. But anyway, let's get back to Muhammad. The dates are important to remember. Muhammad died in 632 AD. He was found in Medina in 630, 2 years. When those people came a few months after the general was there, and they came back under the white flag to find out what's going on. And they found a couple. They poisoned Muhammad. They wrote it. Those people befriended Muhammad and got Muhammad to go to their house. And they slipped him that poison. And he died 2 years later in 632 AD. In the Quran, they wrote, Muhammad became suddenly ill. Nothing else. They don't say where he was buried or not. They'll say, claim he's buried in Medina. Some will claim he's buried in Mecca. But they never found Muhammad's body. Furthermore, the cute story about the whole thing is after this happened, those people went to collect their reward. Well, guess what? They thought they would go collect the reward, but then they got scared. They took off because the Islamists didn't have any reason to keep them alive. They realized that. And they hauled buggy instead. No, that was me. Now again, God just corrected me. See, that's what I'm saying. I just got off my own tangent. And God corrected me. It wasn't that. They went to get their reward. Remember, everybody else was out recruiting. Just those that left behind were the ones writing the Quran. So when they got to Medina, they collected their reward. The people in Medina, they were there. They said they give them the reward. And they give them the reward. They didn't harm them. But when that army came back with those extra soldiers and stuff, they came back. They said, they told them, those people were here and we gave them the reward. They said, you did what? You didn't give them that reward. They need to be dead. They're the evidence, fool. They're the only evidence that can be found out that what everything's been done. They can't be still alive. And they killed those guys writing the Bible or the Quran. That's what God's telling me about. So they went and killed that Hebrew man and his wife after he gave them the reward. They went out to kill them, but they couldn't find them then. Well, guess what? Yeah, guess what? Well, their worst fears got noticed. Because the Jews have record too. They made records too. They got away with it. And they got the reward. Not just the Ethiopians got the story, but also the Jews have the story. Why do you think they hate each other so much now? Because they don't want that story to get out. They can't stand the Jews because they got something over their head. They got the true story of Mohammed over their heads. They can't afford to capture a Jew and the Jews come out and tell them the real story. That they were forced to poison Muhammad. They didn't have no choice. Although they'd been dead. But they got the reward. The proof was in the money they had. You think those people went home back to Israel or wherever they come from, Canaan, and just stayed hidden? No, they were. Israel's nothing to mess with. So they went to there and they said, "Hey, we were staying there, but then these guys come up and they just told us we had to go kill Muhammad and we gave them the poison like they told us to do, and we got the reward and when we got our reward, we left, and there's the money to prove it." So they know there's two sources to find out the truth: in Israel and Ethiopia. So that's why they hate each other so much. Islam would go down in a heartbeat if they found out that Islam paid to have Muhammad assassinated. He didn't write the Quran. His papers were in there. They were copied into it because they were given to those leaders. And guess what those papers had in the first Quran? Stories about Jesus Christ, stories about Moses, stories about Daniel. All these prophets, they had a few of their own in there. But how did they have that information if they never were around the Jews or the Christians? I mean, they could have found out about Daniel and Moses from the Jews. But would they have found out about Jesus Christ from the Jews? No. No way. Come on, you got to think about this thing. What I'm telling you right now is going to be a shock to a lot of Islams and Muslims, because they don't know that they didn't, the day that he rebelled in they say 620 AD. It actually was in 619 when Khadijah dies was the day it happened. November the 2nd, I think it was. That's the same day it happened. The revolt started. And what I'm trying to say is, if anybody that believes in anything, God will lead you to the truth. If he tells you to go to a library, pick it up. I've had to dig it through hundreds of things before I found an original thing. I said that in my last message, the message I put out yesterday. It's covered up the second you say it. This message right here, the first ones I give out, I just give out my first and last name. The next day there was 12 more people with my name on it. How fast is that? So, the next video I put out, I put my full name, Joseph A. Jensen Sr. Well, you can't just copy a person's middle initial and the senior on there, and it'll pull up me. If you ever have any more problems, I just add Joseph Andrew Jensen Sr. I didn't have to do that yet. But if you want to find me, that's how you go. You find my books. My books are on Amazon. They even sell them at Walmart. Nobody's got any on hand right now because I refuse to have my books put on the market, even though they're published, because they're full, especially my second book is full of mistakes. I'll explain that too. But it wasn't really a mistake. I didn't know it. I didn't even know I was going to ever be a missionary, a minister for God. It's not something I planned. It's just something that happened. It's all figured out. It'll explain. A couple of years ago, I hated God. I hated God for 47 years. Him and I had our debates. We had our problems. It was all talked about. But 2 years ago, in 2019, same time, this gene hammer, the molecular scientists out there discovered the God gene, died in 2019. He died in February, but I found out in June. In June 9th, I became a minister. That's when God told me to say. It was within 20 minutes of him telling me, Joe, I don't have hands. I don't have feet. I don't have a mouth. We can't stop nothing. I can't stop nothing. He doesn't have that ability. He can't tell the devil that, and he can't tell us that. We have free will. I don't have hands. I don't have feet. I don't have a mouth. I can't stop somebody. I can't run after you and help you. I can't even say no. Stop. That's when I became a minister, an ordained minister. It only took 15 minutes. You think it's not a legitimate religion? My religion, my beliefs are more legitimate than what's written in Torah, than what's written in the Bible, than what's written in the Quran, what's written in the Hindus and Hare Krishnas, or the Buddhists. Let me tell you something about in India. It's mentioned another thing. Please listen to it. It'll tell you. The similarities between Krishna and Jesus Christ, there hardly is any difference. The words of Krishna and the words of Jesus Christ are almost identical. The same with Buddha. They gave him a face. They gave him a statue. Have we not given Jesus Christ a statue? What we think he looks like? Have we not put the story around Jesus Christ? Yet are almost identical. This world has judged everybody. They determine what we think. We act like gods. But little do we know, and I'll explain this, that every day of every moment in our lives, God and our parents and our ancestors are talking to us. Where do you think you're learning this stuff? You think you went to school to learn it? No, they when they get in your head and they start telling you all the time, when you go to meditate, what are they telling you? They're telling you information. The Dalai Lama, he wasn't wrong. People are reincarnated, but they're not reincarnated into birds or butterflies. They're not reincarnated into somebody else's DNA. But they do have their ancestors and their parents, if they're dead, inside them. And they can hear. God can hear just like they can hear. They can feel. They can see. What they can't do is respond. Unless we respond. In fact, every time everything in this world, it explains this. You listen to these other stories. I'm not going to repeat it because you listen to it later on. But everything in this world is created by God. I don't care what it's the Mars rover. I don't care what it was. The pyramids. It was created by God. We get that smart because how do we get that smart? Because we got smart people behind us talking to us all the time. They're the ones that get us to go to school. They're the ones that lead us to the answers. They say, hey, get, and they're the ones that roll us out of bed. We finally go to sleep into REM sleep when we can't listen to them no longer. We have to sleep. But they're talking to us all the time, teaching us all the time. And whether you believe in God or anything else, whatever you believe in, it doesn't matter. Because unless you chain yourself to your bed and don't do anything the rest of your life, you're being manipulated by your ancestors and God. You're fulfilling their dreams. Your house that you built for yourself. Oh, well, you'll hear more about that. But you understand what I talk about God. You understand what I talk about Muhammad. You understand where to find the proof. I can't afford to go to Ethiopia and question those people. I can't afford to go to Iraq and question them. I can't afford to go to Israel and question them. But I think the Ethiopians have most of the answers, along with the Ark, about Muhammad. But they wouldn't have known about the assassination of Muhammad. They wouldn't have known about that. Muhammad wouldn't have known that because he was killed. So the Ethiopians wouldn't have known that. Well, maybe that's a possibility. They could, because they could have followed Muhammad all the way until the time that he was assassinated. There's no telling what the Ethiopians know. There's no telling what the Ethiopians know can tell us about Jesus Christ. A lot. So anyway, I want to leave you. I got to leave you with this message. Whatever I didn't discuss from the first video on here, I will discuss it again on another video, because this one's long enough. It's pretty well explained, Muhammad. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I left out about Muhammad. I've given you the dates. I've given you the times. I give you the story about the way he was poisoned to get those papers to put in the Quran. And who did it? And this is what God told me. And I don't need to prove nothing. I believe God. Prove me wrong. Prove God wrong. That's it. If you can give me a better explanation, a better story, you can prove that Muhammad was not in Ethiopia, that he was in Medina. Let me tell you one thing about Medina. Anybody that knows anything about anything knows Medina the people in Medina cannot go back to Mecca, because they had written, and they still do in their Bible, claim that Muhammad went back to Mecca with an army of 10,000. He's a great conqueror. Come on, that doesn't fit my story at all. And then you know who knows it? The Meccans. They would laugh in your face. They wouldn't laugh in your face. They'd probably kill you if you said that. Because the Meccans are Muslims. Meccans are Islamics. That's where all the terrorism, every terrorist that ever group there was. I don't care if it's Al-Qaeda, I don't care if it's ISIS, I don't care what group it is. They are, they come out of Medina. They're trying to make everybody believe that Muhammad is still leading them. They don't want, even if they were to say they did it in the name of Muhammad and they pray to Allah, it's a lie. It's a pure lie. They hunted Muhammad. They found Muhammad. And they had Muhammad killed. Muhammad never sang prayers out from a mosque. nor did he ever hear from the mosque. The daughters that are married to the Shiites, the Islamic leaders, yeah, by rape, by kidnapping. That's what this message here has to get out to the whole world. What book have you ever seen has to get out to the whole world? This message. This videotape I'm giving you right now needs to get to the whole world in every language. Every Muslim. 2.4 Muslims in this world. About the same amount of Christians. There's 7.7 billion people in this world need to hear this message. And if I see these thumbs down, this doesn't tell you how many hardheads there are here. People that don't want to believe, they don't want the truth to be known. They will not debate you. They'll scream and holler like every good Islamist do. That's not the way to fight. That's so even Saddam Hussein, as bad as we say he was. Assad, we say Assad this and that in Syria. Do you know in his countries, even in Gaddafi's country where we killed him, assassinated him? Did you know the women? They wore fashionable clothing. They could drive cars. They were safe on the streets. Not only did they allow Christians, Jews, Kurds, Muslims, even Islamics to live together in harmony, not bother each other in their countries. They had freedom of religion like in the United States. Gaddafi had that. So did Assad. What do you think they want him out of there for? But the ones that we're told that are such bad people, like Saddam Hussein, when I was in Iraq, the Kurds were there along with us. Christians were there, just like us. Saddam Hussein tolerated all religions, despite what you'll hear about him. They had a great education system. They were a rich country, but they still had to stay under the ropes of their clothing, the ties to their prayers and everything, masquerading as Islamists, trying to become back when he built the Tower of Nebuchadnezzar. He was trying to bring back the roots of their religion. How they wanted, Saddam Hussein wanted to become the same power of King Nebuchadnezzar was when he took Jerusalem. I mean, Iraq to Canaan, where Israel's at. It's not like going across the strait. We're talking about crossing 3 countries to get there. And you can tell me that this king, he was a terrorist. No, he wasn't a terrorist. He allowed them to build Solomon's temple back. But he went there to prove to them. He's the same King Nebuchadnezzar, that put Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in a fiery furnace. After that happened, he said God was great. He didn't want no more part of God. No more arguments about God. He had seen enough during that incident to turn from being a cold-hearted murderer to a respecter of God, a just man, just king. King Darius, who put Daniel in the lion's den, guess where he was at? In Babylon. Time after right after King Nebuchadnezzar's great-grandson that read the writing on the walls lost his throne. There was a message writing on the wall. They said, Ming, Ming, Tekel Partizin. Nobody can get an interpreted of it. King Nebuchadnezzar's Daniel read the writing on the wall. He used to be an advisor to King Nebuchadnezzar, and he read the writing on the wall. He was in jail. Nebuchadnezzar said to bring him out of jail to interpret the dream. The Belshazzar, Daniel was King Nebuchadnezzar's counselor. He interpreted King Nebuchadnezzar's dreams, but he put him in jail. But Belshazzar put him in jail after he took the throne, his grandson. And when they did that, and he was in that room, a wedding, and the writing come on the wall, it said, Main Czechoslovakia. This is Daniel interpreted it for free. He got him out of jail to read it. He says, you have not met God's standards. Therefore, you will lose your throne and replaced by others. Guess who took his place? King Darius took his place. King Darius, when he had Daniel put in the lion's stand, he didn't want to, but they told him he had to because he wouldn't worship the king. You know what I'm saying? The whole thing is really, I don't know what to say. I've got my own beliefs in God. I don't trust too much of what's inside the Bible anymore. I don't trust what was written in the Torah. Big stories are not told. Now, it doesn't say they're not important, but what's not written in those things, ask yourself what should be in the Bible, what should be in the Quran, what should be in the Torah. It's not there. They don't want the truths to be known. And that's what I'm all about. Help me. Let God lead us to the truth. We got computers nowadays. We got smartphones. We got iPads. Use our hands, our feet, our mouths for God. Communicate with each other. We need to stand up for God. Vote together for God. We could all run, like I pointed out in the thing, we could all run to get off the grid, hiding out of these cities, to go stay in caves or whatever. Or we can force them into exile. Vote them out of things, run them out of town. Make them live. Instead of us moving out, move them out. Anyway, I got to go. And I'm going to tell you guys I love you. And I'm finished with this. I'll be like, yesterday I was amazed when I made that last video. And I said before then, I'm always away how long these things take. And the last one I made yesterday was 1 hour and 34 minutes. I made one earlier that was 1 hour and 35 minutes. Something's telling me right now to hang up. That's God. Okay? So I'll say good night. I love y'all. And I love God. Hope y'all do too. Feel the same way. I hope you love each other. And understand that God is in us all the time. Your parents, your grandparents, your ancestors are all there talking to you all the time. That's what I know. That's what I'm trying to tell the world. I'm trying to tell you, we can't change the past, but we can certainly change the future. Okay? I love you. Ciao.